This is the Today with Tally podcast.
And with that, we're honored to be joined by Berney Flowers. How are you, sir?
Outstanding. Cherishing, how you doing?
Hey, man, just hanging in there. You know, every single day it seems as if we're going through another first
You can say
in
that
America. Wild times we're living in, man. Look, I'm 47, soon to be 48, but we have a couple of very powerful dates that are, etched in stone of American history over the last 47, 48 years that I've been alive. And, of course, 9/11 is, far outdoes everything. Yeah. And that very dark day in America and in 2020. But it seems as if 2020 never really ended. It's, what's next? What's next? What's next? And we've been going through all of these unprecedented times ever since March of 2020. And it just seems as if it's just further spiraling out of control and, leading us to the time we are in right now. We came off a horrifying 4 years of a Biden regime that you're very well. You used to work under that regime until you retired and said, I can't do this anymore. But it has set America up in this, doomsday type scenario that we're seeing and facing every single day in this country. At some point, I don't know what gives.
Dude, we just got to keep swimming the fight, keep on rolling. Things will get better, but they're going to get worse before they get better. Let me tell you. So that's what I'm seeing.
You do think it may get? See, I thought once we got Trump back in the White House and he's been moving and shaking, I mean, he's not wasting a second on getting on making America not just great again, but the best that we have ever been in our 250-year history. Look, and I'm one that I've said this tons of times over the last 6 months that we're going to have the worst and the best in the same fiscal year. And I'll tell you, coming out of 4 years of some hardcore depression, watching my country burn itself down from within. Oh, I'm very certainly happy on what I've been seeing thus far in this very early presidency with Trump. But he's doing everything that the American people want and why he was elected for this position. And he's not going to waste 1 second on flipping the script from literally having all of our rights and freedoms taking away from us and being delivered again, liberated. Because I definitely feel so much more freedom in this country, and I feel a dynamic shift, whether it's spiritual or militarily, the morale. I mean, it just feels like you've got that pride, that American pride and that American exceptionalism here once again. And it feels good.
We haven't had that feeling in a long time, and it's way, way, way overdue. However, just like when a surgeon, cuts out, or let's say a mechanic cuts the rod out of a car, changes out the parts, there's going to be some pain there, and that's what we're going through right now. There's protests, all over the country with a day without immigrants. I mean, a lot of people had gotten very comfortable with the way things are, and they just figure they can, take our laws and blow them off. Well, it's not that way anymore. And then there's all this USAID. I know if you've been paying attention to that, these people have been, creating mischief all around the world. And I've been aware of it, but it's kind of one of those things where you got to be careful what you say, because they're involved with some when we say the deep state, this is the deep state. So, bottom line is there's just been a lot of changes. And in order to cut the rod out, there's going to have to be some pain.
Amen. Yeah. U.S. aid.
Yeah.
There's a lot of folks that are, standing up against this in Congress, and almost makes you feel, where's the conduit?
They're on the payroll. This is just has been a money laundering operation for 40, 50 years ever since. I mean, when John Kennedy put it in place all those years ago, before I was born, the intentions were good. But the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So there you
Yep.
have it.
In 1946, when the federal government put out the law in the VA, basically protecting independent contractors that were working within the VA,
Yeah.
that was all done with good intentions. And then
Oh,
they
yeah.
found out over the last, 72, 73, 74 years that, this has been very, profitable for us. Let's keep it going. And then greed just completely takes over. Before you know it, you got a runaway train, and you got all that money, right? You got all that money flowing and funneling everywhere. And like I said, the conduits, the tunnels, right? You think we got a lot of tunnels coming from Mexico into the United States? I think a lot of those tunnels start in DC and kind of,
Oh, yeah,
go
this
where
is
they go.
an orchestrated mess, and there's a lot of people that have been benefiting from the system for a very, very long time, and now they're going to be exposed, and I can't wait to see it all. But again, we just got to hold tight, because there's going to be a lot of change. A lot of people are going to scream bloody murder. Their funding sources have been cut off. I mean, I was looking in the news, and they were talking about this young man, Mr. Zelensky over in Ukraine. And he says, okay, you guys sent me $170 million, $170 billion, but I only got 70. The rest of it went somewhere else. Really? Well, let's audit this and see where the money actually went. So there's a lot of things going on like that. So Trump is on a tear, and I couldn't be more happy.
Well, why don't we ask all those traders in the house that sit up with Ukraine flags that one day, and perhaps check their accounts, or maybe their kids' accounts?
Yeah.
Because they don't even raise the American flag in there with that much pride. And boy, it was even a standing ovation. They're handing out those Ukraine flags. I bet you that was a big contract to get all those suckers, man. They didn't go down to your local freaking Hobby Lobby and pick those things up, man. That was probably a big old government contract.
Oh, yeah. Every one of those flags that probably cost 50 cents to make, I'm sure they charge them $50 for every one of them.
Yeah.
So that's the way it goes, man. But, we just got to hold tight. I mean, the folks of us that, supported the current administration, and we fought, and, some of us even ran for office. But the idea is that now our time has come. This is the time to take in the victory. Just hold tight. It's all coming.
I am sitting back and I am happy. It's been a long time since I've been this happy when it comes to politics, because literally for the first time in my life, I actually see the government working for me.
Shocking. Absolutely shocking.
The government standing up and giving me a voice through their actions.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had that before.
It is an uncommon occurrence. I've been involved with the government for 34 years, and I was told many times to keep my mouth closed and continue doing the things I was told to do. And as I said before, when it came to the shot, I can't do this. And on top of that, there were other things that were happening. It was just a big ball of ugly with the amount of money that I was helping to port over to places that you wouldn't be happy with. And, you talk about these NGOs and all that sort of stuff. It was just a money laundering scheme. And we were spending ridiculous amounts of money, just stupid. And not just at DHS. I was in DOD. I was working with various agencies. I mean, my paycheck came from Northcom, but I was all over the DMV doing things on behalf of the government. And I just couldn't take it anymore, because it was antithetical to the production and antithetical to the goodwill and discipline of the United States DOD. So the bottom line is, it just had to stop, and I'm glad to see it stopping.
Berney, with your expertise, not only in the military, but what you've done post-military, still working for the federal government, at a very high level, Northcom, DHS. How do you feel right now about what's going on currently across the country with these mass immigration protests, shutting down freeways, municipalities taking over events, and just really coming out with all their foreign flags of their country of origin? And
You know,
doing our country a major disservice. That just doesn't seem to make sense. Why you would go out and protest people being deported for being criminals and come on out and scream and yell that we're all on stolen land and wave your flag. So in this example would be a Mexican flag, and say that you don't want to be ported, that you belong here, but you're waving a Mexican flag. That's very odd to me.
I think that those protesters are doing themselves a great disservice. And here's where I come from. I mean, if you're supporting the flag of another country, then why should you not go back to that country and make your life there if you
Right.
love that place so much? I understand that there's a lot of people who do a lot of things that, Americans generally don't want to do. Got it. But a lot of those people have been born here. And if they are Americans, I mean, not all of them, of course, but the ones that are legal here, I mean, I've seen and served with a lot of Mexican soldiers and Mexican airmen, and, they see themselves as Americans. So those protesters are doing those poor people a very, very great disservice. And as far as all the, a day in the life without an immigrant, you're giving people a bad view of immigration. And what I mean by that is, if you really want to, show yourself supportive of the country, okay, well, there's a lot of people that have been here a long time. How come you haven't gotten your citizenship? Yeah, I can understand. Well, if we sign up to get our citizenship, now ICE is going to come pick us up. It's a complicated thing. And those people that are here illegally are breaking the law. It's not cool. But on the other hand, I think that what Customs and Border Patrol and ICE and Mr. Holman, what they're after is, let's get rid of the criminal element first. And there's a lot of bad people doing a lot of bad things, living in a bad way, and we just can't stand that anymore. And in the meantime, those people that are not criminals, their turn will come. I don't think that Mr. Trump's administration is inhuman by any stretch of the imagination, but we're not going to let our laws be trampled and overrun. So let's start out with, again, the people that are intentionally breaking the law, and we'll go from there. And then after that, the bottom line is that all these protests and stopping traffic and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I've heard stories of people's cars being vandalized and things like that. That is absolutely positively unacceptable, and we can do better.
Yeah, I mean, when you're disrupting the flow of, interstate commerce, emergency vehicles, life-saving ambulance rides and all of a sudden you're stopped in a traffic jam because you can't go front, back, side to side because you've got 10,000 protesters out there and I do understand that a lot of the folks that are out there are doing it
Mm-hmm.
for the reasons that they believe to be right, and they're staying on the sidewalks. What I have seen are agitators come in, kind of like what we saw during the Summer of Love, and you've got Antifa
Yeah.
showing back up. You've got the Palestine people showing up. You got the LGBTQ plus people showing up. You got and then you have now all these immigrants that are coming in from 160 different countries, waving again their flag of origin. And dude, at some point, I mean, I know I'm getting tired of it. We can only have so many protests like daily and on and on and on and on before it just completely starts to get drowned out and people start getting a little bit pissed off over what they're seeing. And I think that we may be coming up to that point soon. And unfortunately, it's the flavor of the month where you've got the immigrants that are doing it.
Yeah.
But if we never would have had all these other protests and stuff like that, I think that they would be a little bit more welcoming. But it's not the first protest that we've seen in this country over the last 5 years. They just keep growing and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then what these people do is they'll piggyback on other protests.
Yeah.
Say, well, if the Palestinian guys are out now we're going to go out on top of it. So like I said, you've got these immigration protests that are now everybody's joining in. So whoever basically is what I'm seeing, Antifa is there to instigate it, and they're piggybacking off of other people's protests so they can come out, cause all the emotion, throw rocks and bottles, get the cops, to make a move on them. I mean, because I've seen the videos and the pictures from the last couple of days, and they're disgusting. Like, you'll have a kid show up with a backpack on. He's got his face totally covered, and he's in front of the cops doing this, like literally, like on their nose, in their eyes, and the cops aren't doing a damn thing about it.
Yeah,
they're breaking the windows of the cop cars. I mean, they're basically doing whatever they want, because the cops know, well, we can't do anything. So why are the cops even there then? Why are they there? They're allowing the people to just walk in the freeway. They're spray painting and tagging the sidewalk as all these cops are just watching. They had cop cars getting crushed, and they're just sitting there watching. I mean, hell, why have a police force if they're going to be just told to stand down every single time something happens? It seems to me, well, if you want to live in a world of anarchy, let them be anarchists and see how long that lasts.
Well, first of all, I think we're on the same page here. First, we need to protect our police officers. And one of the things that, I'm part of Veterans Veterans for America First. I think you are too. And one of the things we're trying to do is sponsor a bill that would protect, police officers by keeping protesters away from each police officer by, creating a 3-foot barrier. You break that 3-foot barrier, you go to jail. But the next thing is the idea of these protests. These protests, most of them are not organic. You got organizations out there just stirring up stuff, just like you mentioned, Antifa jumping on to something that may be pure. I can understand these people's plight. A lot of them don't want to go home. Some of them have been here for years and have never, committed crimes. Okay, let's look at that. But when the LGBT people or the Antifa people or the Act Blue people jump in on this protest, and their faces are covered, they're doing all kinds of crazy things, it becomes dangerous for everyone. And God forbid somebody gets hurt. So we've got to, folks got to have a little bit of common sense when they go out and protest, and understand that, there's a lot of regular Americans that just don't want to be bothered and don't want to be part of there or whatever. Get a permit, stay on the ground that you're supposed to be on. Try not to be intimidating. Okay, if you don't want to do your job for that day and you want to let everybody know that America needs immigrants, hey, great, that's beautiful. But when you start getting violent, I think some of those people need to go to jail. And that's exactly what President Trump is looking for. We've got people who come here and literally are professional protesters. And those professional protesters need to go home. Wherever their home is, it's not here, and it needs to be pointed out, and they need to be transported there.
Unfortunately, I think a lot of those agitators that you're talking about are Americans, and they're basement dwellers.
Yep.
And they're anti-Americans. They have a radical policy, and they don't believe in America.
No, they don't.
They do not believe in America. And, they have proven this to us year in and year out. We see it in college campuses from sea to shining sea. And
there are people who actually make a full-time living from going from protest to protest to protest. And there's a network. I found out about these people years ago. I know you know about them too. And I know it sounds weird when you say George Soros, but his open society promotes a lot of negativism. And why this man has not been banned from the United States, I will never know.
Well, they like to award him, in the White House. He's got some he's got some prestigious awards. And really, what does that award even mean anymore if they're handing him out like that?
You write a check for $20 million and you can get all kinds of awards.
Now riddle me that.
Imagine that. But yeah, this guy's been kicked out of more countries than you can shake a stick at. He tried to destabilize the British economy. I know that for a fact. I think it was Indonesia. He tried to destabilize their country. And basically he's been kicked out of Russia. And the idea is he makes his money by destabilizing economies, and he wants to destabilize ours. And when it all breaks down, these people are protesting and yelling and screaming and doing all their Antifa stuff, and they don't realize that they're being manipulated. They're being
Right.
manipulated. What they're doing is not organic. When you got to pay somebody to go protest, you got to check yourself. And I know you don't have to, I don't have to worry about that with you and the people that we spend time with, but there are a lot of people that are out there, just, hey, let's burn it all down. Well, I'm not going to let them burn it all down because I kind of like the way I live.
It kind of drowns out the messaging.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to win the hearts and minds of millions of Americans by doing what you're doing out there. Again, disrupting the flow of traffic, freight, interstate commerce, emergencies. You are stopping the flow of a city operating, not just a city, but like your second and third and fourth largest cities in America that are out doing this stuff right now.
Yeah.
And again, it completely drowns out the messaging. And when you're out there waving all these foreign flags and stating that America is stolen land and that we need to go back to wherever we're from, I can't tell you how many generations I am. 10. I mean, literally. I mean, we've been here a long time. I mean, and let's not forget, Christopher Columbus came here in 1492, and here we are in 2025 talking about what happened back in 1492. Now, if these folks are so ingrained in wanting to stay here, well, then wouldn't they be staying on stolen land as well?
There's no land on this earth that's not stolen. People need to understand. First of all, America is made of mutts. I am one of them. And I kind of like it here. I like my family here. And this idea of me going to Africa, well, it was Africans who gathered up my ancestors and put them on boats, put them on those European boats and sent them over here. So I don't have any love for those folks over there. They don't have any love for me. I got nowhere to go. So I got to make it work here. And people, some people just like to stir up stuff. And those Antifa people, they have a special negative place in my heart because they keep something going in a negative, and they just want anarchy is what they want.
Yeah.
And they just want to tear down society. Now, you're in Texas, right?
Mm-hmm.
You ever heard of the Comanches?
Yeah.
Imagine. Now think about it. If you do a little bit of study on the Comanche history, I lived in Texas for quite some time, for 7 years, and I've been studying Western lore for a while. But the issue of the day is that this concept of all the peaceful Native Americans. No, that's a lie. That is a fraud, a fraudulent story that was made up by people that are trying to divide us. The Comanches were among the most fierce warriors that ever walked on the planet. And God forbid you ever get caught by them. I mean, they were snatching women and children and literally flaying people alive, their enemies. And, they took over other people's lands. They fought the Mexicans. They fought the other tribes, the indigenous tribes in the area. And so this concept of everything being so peaceful, well, the Mexicans stole their land from somebody else, and before, who was that? The issue of the day is written history only goes back so far. But the issue of the day is that people need to understand that everybody on this planet is a mutt. And wars are a natural occurrence of humanity. We live in the safest time to ever have lived on the face of the planet. There are fewer wars now. At any given time, there's 200 small wars going on that you don't hear about. Well, I know you know about them, but most people don't. But the issue of the day is this war is almost a natural byproduct of humanity. Somebody always wants something somebody else has. And the concept of America being a place where there's at least no war in the continental United States, well, I'll take that. But this concept of, oh, you stole this land. Well, who did your ancestors steal it from? When you're talking to these people that are saying these things, they ought to be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah, I agree, man. I got a question for you. So I was posting something about what happened yesterday. The Mexican president, to me, looked like she caved to the tariffs. After 24 hours. It was pretty quick.
Yeah.
And and President Trump, I mean, he's off to an amazing start. I mean,
Oh
this
yeah,
guy is just, he is a genius, and everything he has been through on top of everything else, and then
yeah.
him coming in, and just shaking that hornet's nest, and just
He's killing it.
he's got his team, he's got his loyalists in there, and he is working for the good of the American people, and I love it. I love it. I love it. Like I said, I've never seen the government work this hard for me,
Yeah,
and I've never seen them work so hard for every single proud American in this country. But somebody says, oh, well, Trump got played because they've always had troops on the border. They've had 15,000 troops on the border. And now they're basically going to pull 5 back. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. So let's ask a DHS guy. Were there 15,000 troops on the border during the Biden administration from Mexico?
not that I know of, and I would have known. I mean, I've had done work with the actual Mexican government and with the Mexican Army and the Mexican Navy. And the issue of the day is that border zone is run by the cartels.
Right.
And whatever they said, and more importantly, here it is. Our economy dwarfs Mexico's, and same goes to Canada. So the concept of them defying an order from, well, not necessarily an order or a directive from Mr. Trump, when our economy dwarfs theirs, he did what a businessman should do. He basically told them, we'll stop doing business with you. We'll put this 25% tariff up, and we'll see if you like that. And they just can't stand that. So whatever this woman said is just simply propaganda.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's just her. I think it's a lot of the folks in America who don't like America,
Yeah.
that are always looking for ways to stand up and raise their voice in defense of another country,
Oh, yeah.
while putting ours down, while out fighting to stay here. Again, we're living in some crazy times.
Bill.
Yeah, we're the only country that tolerates it, because we are a nation of immigrants, but we
Yes.
are also a nation of legal immigration, and not out of control, non-transparent, 20 million plus in 4 years with criminal elements and transnational gangs. We're not that type of
No.
immigration. So we've got some pushback here. But that just doesn't make any sense to me.
As far as I'm concerned, the people that are complaining about Mr. Trump's actions, well, there's an international flight that leaves Baltimore International Airport pretty much at least once a day, going to all kinds of places. It wouldn't cost much to leave. I don't see any big. What happened to I think it was Whoopi Goldberg said, if Trump gets in, I'm moving to Canada. Or Sonny Hoskins, I hear she's in trouble. All those women from The View, they're all supposed to be moving out if Trump got in. Well, Trump's here. I hadn't seen him go anywhere. What's up with that? So,
I wish they would.
I wish they would. I hate them women. Hate is a strong word, but I'll use it in this case.
It would make America great instantly.
Amen.
Greater.
They spread a lot of propaganda and disinformation, and Saul Alinsky's in his rules for radicals. I mean, one of the first rules is blame your opponent for the things that you have done.
And that's all they do.
That is all
they
do.
They are evil.
Terrible.
100%. And speaking of being irresponsible, these folks are on TV doing it. Okay.
Every day.
They're on TV. Okay, fine. That's, if you want to call it entertainment or opinions, that's what, and in the United States of America, you can do that. But if you are a sitting member of Congress and you're preaching this propaganda to go out and take it to the streets, they've been saying this since 2020. Go out, take it to the streets. Well, you saw what happened when they said take it to the streets the first time. When will elected officials start to be held accountable for disrupting and destroying their own nation while having a national microphone in Congress as they grandstand their way through their term and then expect a good old paycheck from the hardworking American taxpayers, the same people that you put down every single freaking day and talk about how bad of a country we are. I can't, Bernie, that's just too much.
Man, you put me in mind of that Elian Omar, from up in Minnesota. Now, that woman, if I'm not mistaken, is born in Somalia or somewhere in the Horn of Africa. Somehow she manages to get here and finds herself in Congress. Now, have we brought so many people from another culture into Minnesota that they can elect their own congressperson? Shame on us. But, there's a lot of people that are literally working against America. And that's the real deal here. I mean, you're this deal that you're going to find out that, with this USAID, whatever for international development, the bottom line is it was a money laundering deal. So they put their people, a lot of those Congress people are getting money from this USAID arrangement, and that's how they can stay in Congress forever, like Nancy Pelosi, who has been in Congress longer than you've been alive. It's ridiculous. And so all this stuff is going to come out. And what I said earlier about the idea is things are going to get uglier before they get better. We got to ferret out all the rats. There's a lot of rats eating our grain. So we got to send the cats in to kill the rats. But it's going to be some struggles first. And, people just need to hold tight and let the government, or better yet, let Mr. Trump do what Mr. Trump does. And I got the feeling that sometime in about 6 months from now, we'll be very, very happy that we did.
What could we expect this summer here in the United States? Are we setting ourselves up for a summer of love 2.0? Or is this going to be more of a bumpy ride when it comes to, stocks, bonds, and not so much socially?
Personally, I met with my financial advisor today, and we made some slight adjustments. A lot of people are going into bonds. I'm no stock trader by any stretch of the imagination. Don't pay any attention to what I'm doing. Do what you think is right. But I do believe that we're not going into a summer of love, because the, establishment, the infrastructure of the police across the nation and at the federal level, they're all coalescing on a cause. They understand that this is their time to make things right. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but you look at the New York subway, and they've increased police presence on the subway. So basically, you can ride the subway in the middle of the night and expect to see a police officer on the subway with you. So a lot of that's being changed because Trump is sending funding into these police departments that haven't had the kind of funding that they needed before. But back to, what we should expect in the next 6 months. There's a lot of folks that hate us, and they're going to do everything they can to destabilize us, because this idea of holding people accountable in other countries, they don't like that. They don't like this idea of tariffs. And remember, there's also this set of BRICS nations that they're basically setting us up to take us down. And from what I can understand, the Russians and the North Koreans, they're having a second look at BRICS right now because of Trump. And so, like I said, I think it's going to take about 6 months to straighten a lot of this stuff out. And in the meantime, there's going to be the turmoil of people complaining about losing their cushy government jobs that they haven't gone to for quite some time. I mean, there's a lot of good people working in government, but there's a lot of bad people who are giving those good people a bad name. And the concept of, okay, I'm going to be making $100,000 a year, but I get to work from home and I'm not really doing anything. I mean, I know a lot of people like that. I remember where I live. I'm in a beltway community around around DC, and there's a lot of people who just basically have not been doing their job. And if those people don't want to do their job, it's it's a new sheriff in town. If you've been trained to do X, Y, Z, stick around. But if you haven't been doing what you're supposed to do, then expect to be sacked. Now, if I may, you remember the term reduction in force?
Yeah.
Yeah, I went through 2 of those in my 20 years in the United States Air Force. And what people don't understand is the idea that after a big war or something, the government will say, okay, we don't need so many military people. So a lot of guys like you and I that were career guys, it's like, okay, we don't need you anymore. We're going to turn you out. To give an example, here I am at Squadron Officer School, 1991. We had just got done with the first Gulf War. I was in school, in a selective school for 8 weeks with people who had literally dropped bombs on people's heads. This was air squadron officer school, and the war was just over. And so one particular guy was what we call a scope dope, air weapons controller, flies on the AWACS, and a great guy. His wife divorced him because of his deployment. Okay. He's over here serving his country. And while he's away, wife sends him a Dear John letter, and he ended up getting divorced while he was over there. Okay. The war didn't last that long, but he lost his wife. She said, if you go, I'm done. So he gets back. He's now a single parent. All right. Air Force says, we're going to send you this management school to, improve your level of whatever and make sure you're a great officer, yada, yada, yada. So we're there for like 8 weeks. And in the meantime, the Air Force sends him another letter. Now, mind you, his parents were keeping his daughter because he's now a brand new single parent. The Air Force does a reduction in force, and his number came up, and he got put out of the Air Force. After, all this stuff he'd gone through, after going through the first Gulf War, after literally losing a wife because of his commitment to the United States Air Force, the Air Force kicked him to the curb. Now, I'm sure he's doing fine now, but to my knowledge, there's never been a reduction in force in the civilian community. And it's tough, but that's stuff we've had to deal with. If you're in the military more than 10 years, you're going to go through a reduction in force. You have made, that a career, but there's going to be a lot of people, career guys, that were like, hey, lost my career, because the government decided that they didn't need enough people in my specialty. So, or they had too many people in my specialty. I saw a lot of people that got sent home. In my case, I don't know why they kept me for all those years, but that's another story for another time. But what I am saying is that the civilian workforce needs a wake-up call, and a reduction in force is what they're going through, and they're just not used to it. Yeah, man.
94, 95 is when I was first entering the Marine Corps under Clinton.
Ugh.
And they were making the Marine Corps, I believe it was one of the smallest corps that it ever was. I didn't want to say like 162,000 active duty Marines.
Clinton's dividend.
Yeah, and they were forcing Marines out at 8, 9, 10 years and giving them 25, 30,000 to walk away. Even some that were at like 14 years.
Yeah.
And Clinton was making the military, he was just cutting it.
Yep.
And
oh, by the way, that was right before Kosovo. Think about it.
All these dates just always just happen, right? I mean, is it a coincidence that all these insurance companies dropped all these fire victims just months before the worst wildfire in LA history? I mean, let's start connecting dots. I mean, it's like when I was a kid, I used to love playing, the connect the dot book.
Yep.
You're like, I'm not really an artist,
but
I could draw a dragon if I followed the dots.
Yeah.
And I became a dot connector
at
a very young age, and it seemed to work out fairly well for me because
I think you're still a dot connector. Just
I got trained really well with dots, and a lot of the stuff I don't even really talk about on my podcast because I don't want it to be taken down or But the dot connecting in this world that we're living in, especially in this country, is absolutely like you can't even watch TV anymore. I mean, what's crazier than just living in today's society in the United States?
I think it was Hawaii, Oahu, they had those fires out there. How come nobody's talking about that?
This stuff blows right over and everybody goes back to their look. Americans are so consumed. We are so consumed with everything coming at us in these phones, right?
Yeah.
We are so entertained, whether it's through sports or it's through apps on these phones, or if it's doing a podcast like this to where, we are, living out our life's purpose, and we've got food and we've got luxury. even if you aren't doing very well in life as an American, you're doing probably 99% better than the rest of the world.
You can say that again.
And so we are inundated with so much stuff coming at us. And if it's not happening right now, this second, it's really no longer a news story. I mean, look how fast these 2 plane incidents have completely dropped off. I haven't heard anything about those in the last 3 days.
Not a peep.
I mean, I've flown into Reagan National a million times, and I'm like, dude, do you know how much terrain is just west of there? That, I mean, they could have had, daylight for years out there and trained all day, but they want to train literally right at one of the most
busiest airport in America, arguably. And
but not just busy. You have delegates flying in there. You have ambassadors flying in. You got congressmen. You got senators. You have got the most important people in the world flying in and out of Reagan, any minute, any hour of the day. And here you are doing a single aircraft
training flight that wasn't even, it wasn't even full. I mean, I think they were missing a crew chief from what I read. And the idea is that crew chief would have probably seen that plane coming. But the issue of the day is it shouldn't have been there. Fort Belvoir, Biggs Army Airfield, I think that's what it's called. I mean, I was stationed at Fort Belvoir for a little while, but the issue of the day is only about, a 10-minute helicopter ride from there. There was no training that they needed to do at Reagan Air Base that I know of. I mean, or at Reagan Airport that I know. They shouldn't have been there. And but you're right. The news cycle is moving so fast. It's like, what's happening next? And then something happens, and then all of a sudden you don't hear about it anymore. Nobody's talking about East Palestine, Ohio. Think about that. Nobody's talking about Oahu. Nobody's talking about, even the LA fires. We're not even talking about that anymore. You mentioned about the insurance stuff, but the issue of the day is that, now they're on to the protest and the day of, day without immigrants. I mean, people are crazy, and just a wild time. It's just going to take a while to get things back to normal, and what is normal? Well, this ain't normal. I know what ain't normal, and this isn't normal.
To have Trump come back in and like we're making our country this, the force again.
Yeah.
In the world with respect and dominance and pride. But I have given so much stress and anxiety and depression that I've been through watching my country fall.
Right.
And now it's like, okay, I think we're going to be okay. But I put myself through so much, and I don't know if that's how a lot of other Americans feel.
Dude,
because we got up.
You care.
Yeah, we got up and we got involved. I know people that have passed away from heart attacks.
Yeah.
It could be related to our country folding. I mean, look at the veteran suicide rate went through the roof after this Afghanistan withdrawal. And, we have so many issues going on in the country where a lot of people are like, I'm checking out, because I'm just not aligned anymore with, why did I go out and do this? Why did I fight here? Why did I lose my brothers? Why do I have this survivor's guilt? All for what? And I don't know. There's just so much.
But dude,
look at it as being so unnecessary. Like, how did we even have this last regime? How did we even allow this? And again, look, we're not the protest type.
The reason that we do what we do is for the next generation. If we don't do this, who will?
That's true.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's the service and the sacrifice of being an American. You don't need to have ever served in the military to be a proud American to know that you stand and live by the Constitution of this great country, and that you believe in her, and that you will stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above.
I mean, love it.
Come on, dude. That right there is powerful stuff.
It is. Makes me get all excited, man.
Let me tell you about Patriot Homes right here in the greater Houston metropolitan area, folks. These guys are out doing the hard work. It's kind of hard to please people in today's world, but let me tell you, Cody Dawson and his family business stand behind everything they do.
Custom kitchens, bathrooms, master bathrooms, whole home renovations, outdoor patios, home additions, outdoor kitchens.
They are your one-stop shop for everything that you want to do in your home. It's always nice to know that you got somebody that can come in and give you a great price. And not only give you a great price, but be on time, on budget, reliable. All you got to do is just go to patriothomestx.com. That's patriothomestx.com. They're building your vision with pride and precision. I know so many great, I mean, some of the best Americans I know weren't born here, and they became Americans through the system, whether it was through the, serving in the Marine Corps or in the Army, or becoming Border Patrol agents, or just coming here to make a better life for themselves and then working through the system to get that American citizenship. Do you think that those people support what's going on right now on the streets of America? Absolutely not.
No, not at all.
Because they are proud Americans and they understand how our country works, that we are a nation of laws.
There should be a buffer zone between police officers and citizens. It's just a safety thing, and that's something that we need to push forward. But I've seen on television, matter of fact, I'm looking at my other screen and I'm seeing protests going on, and as you said before, there's a lot of wonderful people that don't necessarily ascribe to the idea that you just need to get out and protest. A lot of this stuff is not organic. And my hope is that they'll just simply run out of gas and let this go, because, people, American citizens, be they black, white, green, orange, whatever, are standing up. I don't know of any place I want to live. I've traveled all over this world. I've seen a lot of different places. I've seen places that had, literally used human feces to fertilize their crops. Okay. That can't be a good thing, but that happens in a lot of the parts of the world where we've operated, places where they don't have clean water. Well, I can't think of any place in America where they don't have clean water. I can't think of any place in America where you can't get clean food. And I don't want to give that up. I don't want to share it with anybody. And if you come here and you try to interrupt that, you're going to have to go through me. So they got another thing coming, and we got how's it go? Daddy's home.
Berney, look, I want to ask you a very serious question here. We have got President Trump, who is off to a insanely awesome start. I mean, again, to see the government actually working for the good of the people is so, it just motivates me to no end. And of course, it just, American pride, American exceptionalism, like we are back, man. And it's a morale boosting feeling of it's happiness. It's being overjoyed, in so many ways. But we've got some serious stuff going on in the southern border. And I know you are no stranger to the Department of Homeland Security and working at the highest levels when it comes to that southern border. And I know you know a lot of things and have seen a lot of things down there. Well, what has really gone on in the last Biden regime is we saw ruthless and reckless behavior of our government, allowing in, numbers that I'm hearing close to 20 million from 160 different countries, unchecked, unvetted. Come on in. You're free to move about the country. Well, the cartel down there is in charge of that border, and the cartel knows that they've been in charge of that border. And now that Trump is back in office, he's putting them on notice, saying there's a new sheriff in town and President Trump is back, and we will take over our country again, restore its sovereignty, and secure our border with or without your consent. Now, the cartel, I look at the Mexican cartels a lot like I look at Al Qaeda and the Taliban. These guys are ruthless. Ruthless. And the damage that they do down there when it comes to running their organizations is I can't even say it on this podcast because it's so bad.
Oh yeah.
But what kind of pushback can we expect from these cartels? Look, we got U.S. Marines on the border. We have Border Patrol now. We have got deputized citizens down there from Texas. It takes one bullet to cause an international incident. I'm hearing perhaps IEDs on the border. I'm hearing RPGs from one side. We haven't had any massive exchanges yet, but I'm hearing that we've got this stuff coming down range. And like I said, one bullet, international incident, and we got a big problem on our hands. And we're already kind of, in talks with Mexico and the Mexican president, and we've got all the immigration stuff going on here right now. We've got Mexican flags and all these protests going on in the United States. And the cartel's got to know that I think I've got a pretty good hand right now, because if we were to fire one shot and say hit a Marine or hit somebody with ICE or Border Patrol, what's that going to do? It's going to rally a lot of troops. And unfortunately, a lot of those people are here in the streets right now that already don't like America. And once we push on the cartel, they're going to push back.
These people are not dumb, okay? On one side, they got the American border and a whole gang of American military, Customs and Border Patrol, ICE. These people are armed, and they are mandated because they got a president who will back them. On the other hand, 10,000 Mexican troops have just been deployed. Now, this is just Berney talking, but my guess is if they're smart, they'll back down. They're not going to go against it. They're going to be caught in a free fire zone, to tell you the truth. And I'm thinking a lot of these folks will back down on their, boldness, because some of these people control entire border towns. But they're going to just fade off into the sunset. They're going to wait for us to leave, is what I'm trying to tell you. So I don't see that there's going to be a lot of conflict, because nobody wants to get into a fight with a Marine. Trust me. Okay. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. I really, really, really would not. A lot of these people, they're going to lose their Chinese fentanyl connection and bringing all the, the portions that, that they use to produce all that stuff. So I think now that the Mexican military is involved and they have been read the riot act, I think, like I said, that turbulent 6 months that I mentioned, whole new game. A lot of that stuff is going to change. Now, yeah, I'm very positive about the new administration. I'm very positive about the things that they're going to make Mexico do on our behalf. But, when it all boils down to, Mr. Trump is going to force them economically to do our bidding. And these cartels, are operating outside of the law. So they're going to have to be collateral damage when it comes to international relations. So watch my words. 6 months from now, we'll be having this conversation, and it's not going to be nearly as bad as it is, and the fentanyl will come to a halt. Trust me.
Well, that'll be good. It's because out of the 10,000 troops, and that's just a very small amount of their Mexican military, but who knows what side of the fence that these guys are playing on because of the corruption that does happen.
There's a whole nother game down there, but
yeah.
Like I said, their president has gotten involved, and we got to give him the benefit of the doubt. And in the meantime, we got a whole lot of military equipment and a whole lot of know-how that we learned how to use over in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now, am I advocating us going into a foreign country across the Rio Grande and doing dirty deeds? I would never advocate that, but I am saying that there is precedent for it. I mean, General Pershing chased Pancho Villa all over the Southwest, as I remember, and they didn't honor any borders. So I wouldn't recommend any of that sort of stuff. But I'm just telling you that Trump is not playing. A military is only as good as its leader. Only as good as the will of its leader. And also, there's a lot of electronic things that can be done, with drones and surveillance systems and, robotics and all that sort of stuff, the kind of stuff that I used to do. So with all that said, the hounds have been released. That's the deal. We didn't have the wherewithal and the intestinal fortitude with the last president to do what needed to be done. That's not going to be a problem with this president.
Oh yeah, yeah, and he's wasting no time. He's not going to waste 1 second, like how Biden went all the way down to the last final minute
Yeah.
of his presidency when it came
Pardoning
to
his family.
destroying our country.
Yeah.
We aren't going to waste a second either. We are not going to waste not 1 second. But yeah, man. See, I don't know. For some reason, I think that because the cartel, I do look at them as a massive terroristic threat, and now they have
terrorists.
been deemed a terrorist organization.
Yeah.
That these guys, they're just as ruthless, and I think they're just as strong as Al Qaeda and the Taliban. I really do. And you saw what they did. They didn't stand down to us. They weren't scared. And also too, you gotta understand that this operation that they run, they're not going to want to stop that.
They certainly aren't.
They're not going to want to stop those operations. And also, they know that we have rules of engagement, and they don't. We won't be fighting a Mexican military. We are going to be fighting their militia members and their known gang members from these cartels. And again, it takes one of those crazy guys to throw a round down range to spark an international incident. And now you've got everybody jumping into this. And what I was saying earlier, we have a lot of those folks that are already here in the United States. So
I would agree, but
they
it's
can
going to
easily destabilize so many different cities across America if something like that were to happen once these orders were to come down the chain of command from the cartels. And if that does happen, stand by, because there could be some big fallout in the United States of America if something like that happens. And I do sincerely believe that is very realistic. What could happen? And I think we would nip it in the butt really quick, but I still think it would happen. It could be 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, or whatever, or even a couple of months of, ongoing fighting on the border. But I mean, I don't know I just think that threat is so real, and I play it out in my head. And I'm like, this could totally happen. I mean, it could totally happen because, like I said, I hold these guys to the same account that I hold some of the most dangerous terrorists in the world to. And I think these guys, I think they might even be a little crazier.
I think personally that a lot of them are not as crazy as they would like us to believe. I think that they will realize that, again, that our government is serious this time, and we're funding what is good and right to protect our people, and they will lay low. They will, they may have a lot of sleeper cells and such over here. And I do worry about the 20 million that came across the border, but open rebellion, I don't see that happening within the next 6 months. And in the meantime, Holman's going to be cutting down on their numbers, and they're not going to fight us openly. They're going to, because remember, Trump's only going to be in office for another 4 years. So a lot of these people will just blend into the community, and we'll have safety for a little while. In the meantime, get after them. Get after them now because we've got 2 years before the midterms, and Trump's not wasting any time, and he knows that he doesn't have to worry about getting reelected. So they're just going to lay low.
And in my 47, 48 years, we've never been on offense. I sincerely believe that we are on offense.
We are.
We do not get this opportunity very often.
Never seen it before.
Yeah. And Trump ain't going to be here forever. Like you said, he's got 4 years.
Yeah.
But then even after that, he's getting older, and and he's not going to be here forever. Right.
Yeah.
And so what's going on right now is going to be a massive generational shift, if you will. If we play our cards right, we can be good for the next 2 to 3 generations. At least I'm thinking glass half full here.
That's how I see it. I see this as a unique opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm seeing a lot more kids that are, going to high school that are, more patriotic than I've seen. And, really just your average Americans are tired. and they just want their country back, and we proved it. We overwhelmingly elected President Trump to where the media couldn't even question it. And MSNBC didn't question it.
They're CNN, on the run.
They were like, we got smoked.
Yeah,
we got smoked.
You know, I was watching James Carville. I know you're familiar with him, the Raging Cajun, and he was just saying last night on some MSNBC broadcast that how they screwed up and how they should have had somebody ready to go on deck to take over for Biden, and they just messed this whole thing up. And, you know, the issue of the day is people are starting to see that they've been lied to, you know, and the concept of picking a nominee without them actually going through a primary. They could have put together a primary. The deep state just decided that they wanted somebody that they could control, and they got the results. And so the bottom line is things are looking up. As I said before, it's going to take about six months to clear away the mess if they continue with the pace that they're at right now. But I'm just thrilled, and things are moving positive. And you know, as far as the border is concerned, what's happening down there is what needs to happen, because, you know, the border, you know, the criminals will literally have no place to retreat if they're held. If the Mexican army is held accountable for the things that they're responsible for, the corruption will start going away. And that's really what we need. And same thing goes for Canada. A lot of fentanyl comes through Canada as well. And you see what happened to Trudeau. I mean, not only is he resigned, but, you know, he is kowtowed to, you know, to the president. So bottom line is I expect them to, you know, try to help us cut off this fentanyl thing and a lot of the illegal crime. A lot of cops that I know have just been waiting for somebody to back them, and now they're being backed up.
Yeah,
so
that morale is high.
Yeah. So morale is good. They know that they're not going to be chastised for the things that for trying to do their job. Imagine that. Because under the Biden administration, a lot of cops weren't sure that they weren't going to be reprimanded for doing their job.
Yeah, so, I'm not going to go to that call very fast, because if I do, they're gonna film me for trying to save somebody, you know, whatever it may be. And I mean, literally, I mean, those guys are standing in the freeways right now, all online in riot gear, while hundreds of people that are there's tens of thousands in the freeway, but there's hundreds up front and personal, and getting very close to these guys and doing whatever that they're trying to get a reaction from these police officers, and they're just not going to give them that reaction. But then again, I look at it and I'm like, how are we allowing this garbage to happen? I mean, these punks are coming in, they're dancing around them, they're throwing crap at them, they're they're blowing cigarette smoke and vape smoke right at. I mean, it's like so disrespectful.
We've been allowing this generation of millennials, and I say millennial generation, to basically do whatever they want to. This is the generation of participation trophies and stuff like that. And a lot of them have never really had to suffer through anything difficult. So they think, you know, a lot of this stuff is just play. Well, they're going to find out, as I said before earlier, daddy's home and daddy don't play. And, you know, so that's where we are, man. So you're going to see a lot of consternation and whining and complaining, but the job's going to get done. Trump's not going to back down, and the people he's hiring certainly aren't going to back down. So I'm just enjoying the heck out of watching this. And they've got plans on top of plans that, you know, how to do this is not new. We know what needs to be done. It's just a simple matter of having a leader that is willing to back you. Once you got that leader, you go to hell for him, you know, and that is literally what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We took our eyes off the ball for a very long time. It took generations to get to where we're at. And now we just want these generations of failures of us taking our eyes off the ball when they're taking a little bit at a time. And in 2020, the big false swoop that basically put us on life support. Now we want it all back right now. And I think we're doing everything we can to get it back as soon as possible. But because of what has happened and how far down that we went, we're not going to ever allow that again in our country.
No,
because people know how dangerous and how close we really were. And man,
we're moving in the right direction, and let's look past all that old stuff, get rid of the Faucis of the world and the rest of these characters and the professional protesters and all these other people. It's a new day. It's a golden day. How about that?
It's a new day.
Yeah, bro.
Berney Flowers, thanks for joining me today, buddy.
Jyrene, thanks for having me. We always have these wonderful conversations.
This is the Today with Tally podcast.